America's first Republican president. He led the North to victory in the Civil War and freed all Southern
Good morning,
slaves by
everyone.
executive order.
How are you today? I will come back and live stream a video for you. Oh yeah.
In Washington, D.C. Andrew Johnson, Southerner born into poverty. He sided with the Union during the Civil War. But after the war, he blocked Congress's attempts to impose reforms on the South. This led to his impeachment, though he was acquitted in the Senate by 1 vote. Ulysses S. Grant, Union hero of the Civil War. He used the military to enforce Reconstruction of former slave states and protect those targeted by white supremacist violence in the South. His presidency also saw war against Native Americans in the Great Plains. Rutherford B. Hayes won the most disputed, corrupt, and violent presidential election in U.S. history. He sought to heal the wounds left by the Civil War and Reconstruction, but by withdrawing federal troops from the South, allowed white supremacists to regain power. A Garfield took on corruption in the Senate and civil service with some success, but was shot by an embittered lawyer just 4 months into his first term and died of his wounds. Chester Arthur, son of an Irish Baptist preacher. Against excitation, he proved above political faction and continued Garfield's work of reforming government bureaucracy. Grover Cleveland, the first Democrat president since the Civil War, and the only president to serve 2 non-consecutive terms. He used the presidential veto with gusto, blocking measures he thought were beyond the remit of federal government, even pensions for Civil War veterans and subsidies for destitute farmers. Look out for part 2 of U.S. Presidents, where we continue with America's 23rd president. Bridgman Images are the leading supplier of art, culture, and historic images and footage, representing many of the world's finest museums, collections, and artists. Their experts are ready to help with research and copyright for projects ranging from TV and film to publishing and advertising. For more information, please visit bridgmanimages.com. Epic History TV relies on support from our viewers to keep making history videos. If you like what we do, please consider making a small pledge at our Patreon page. To part 2 of Epic History TV's guide to the first 44 presidents of the United States. We pick up with the 23rd president, Benjamin Harrison, the grandson of 9th President William Henry Harrison. His presidency saw federal peacetime spending pass $1 billion for the first time. He also passed laws to ensure fairer competition in business. Grover Cleveland. His second term was overshadowed by economic depression. The president offered little federal assistance and sent in troops to break a strike by the American Railway Union. William McKinley. industry and waged war against Spain over Cuban independence. As a result, America gained the Philippines, Guam, and Puerto Rico. Shortly into his second term, he was assassinated by American anarchist Leo Czolgosz. Theodore Roosevelt, at 42, the youngest ever president. As vigorous and energetic in office as he was in life, he broke up business monopolies, asserted U.S. power abroad, ensured completion of the Panama Canal, passed laws to protect national forests and parks, and won a Nobel Peace Prize for brokering a truce between Russia and Japan. William Howard Taft, a distinguished judge, but not a natural politician. He achieved many reforms, but alienated progressive Republicans, including his former friend and ally, Theodore Roosevelt, who went off to form the Bull Moose Party. The Republican split handed the 1912 election to the Democrats. Taft later became Chief Justice of the United States. Woodrow Wilson, a former professor of political science and the first Southern president since the Civil War. He passed progressive reforms at home, and after numerous German provocations, led America into World War I. His vision for a new world order, with America playing a full part as a member of the new League of Nations, was blocked by a Republican Senate. Warren G. Harding. He sought to roll back Wilson's wartime measures, but following his sudden death from natural causes, revelations emerged of extramarital affairs and cabinet corruption that destroyed his reputation. Calvin Coolidge, the son of a village storekeeper, moral conservative, and man of famously few words. He also believed in minimal federal intervention and is still held up as a role model by fans of small government. Herbert Hoover. Raised a Quaker, he was a successful engineer, humanitarian, and Secretary of Commerce. But his presidency was overshadowed by the Great Depression. Attempts to revive the economy included spending on major public works, but to little effect. Franklin D. Roosevelt.
Franklin D.
cousin
Roosevelt.
of Theodore Roosevelt, diagnosed with polio, aged 39. His package of economic measures helped lift America out of the Great Depression, while also improving federal treatment of Native Americans. In unprecedented 4 elections, he led America to the verge of victory in World War II, dying in office just 3 weeks before Germany's surrender.
Surrender. Harry S. Truman.
Seeking a swift end to the Pacific War, he authorized the dropping of 2 atomic bombs on Japan. At home, he passed progressive welfare and employment reform, and prioritized civil rights. Abroad, he provided international leadership as the West entered a Cold War with the Soviet Union. Dwight D. Eisenhower, Supreme Allied Commander in Europe in World War II. He was approached by both parties to run for president. He was the first to be limited to 2 terms by a new constitutional amendment. He sought to contain the Soviet Union and de-escalate the Cold War, and oversaw a period of great American prosperity that included the construction of the U.S. interstate highway system. John F. Kennedy.
John F. Kennedy.
The first Catholic president, and at 43, the youngest elected to office. He sought to instill America with renewed idealism, made some progress over civil rights in the South, and narrowly avoided nuclear war during the Cuban Missile Crisis. He was assassinated in Dallas, Texas, by Lee Harvey Oswald. Lyndon Johnson. He enacted a wide-ranging package of reforms to address racial injustice and poverty. But frustration at the speed of progress was reflected by race riots in America's cities. Overseas, he continued to escalate U.S. involvement in Vietnam. Richard Nixon.
Richard Nixon.
U.S. troops from Vietnam and reduced tension the Soviet Union and China. He became the first president to resign his office to avoid impeachment for his role in the Watergate scandal. Gerald Ford
Gerald Ford
granted Nixon a
is
presidential
the
pardon,
president.
then struggled with inflation and economic recession at home, while furthering detente with the Soviet Union. Jimmy Carter.
Jimmy
He
Carter.
struggled with an energy supply crisis,
Jimmy Carter.
inflation, and unemployment. Raised a Baptist, he championed human rights abroad, brokered peace between Egypt and Israel, and negotiated a treaty giving control of the Panama Canal to Panama. But his popularity was greatly damaged by the Iran hostage crisis.
John Kennedy.
Ronald Reagan,
Ronald
former
Reagan.
Hollywood actor, and at 69,
69.
the oldest elected
Elected
president.
president.
His tax
His
cuts and
tax
free market
is removed.
system. John F. Kennedy,
John F. Kennedy,
first Catholic
the
president,
first
and at 43,
character
the
president,
youngest elected to office.
and at
He
43,
sought to instill America with renewed
new
idealism,
idea.
made some progress
That's
over
some
civil
progress.
rights in the South, and narrowly avoided nuclear war during the Cuban Missile Crisis. He was assassinated in Dallas, Texas, by Lee Harvey Oswald. Lyndon Johnson. He enacted a wide-ranging package of reforms to address racial injustice and poverty. But frustration at the speed of progress was reflected by race riots in America's cities. Overseas, he continued to escalate U.S. involvement in Vietnam. Richard Nixon
Richard Nixon.
withdrew U.S. troops from Vietnam
Richard
and
Nixon.
reduced tension with the Soviet Union and China. He became the first president to resign his office
First
to
president.
avoid impeachment for his role in the
role.
Watergate scandal.
John
Gerald
Kennedy.
Ford
Gerald Ford.
granted Nixon a presidential pardon, then struggled with inflation and economic recession at home, while furthering detente with the Soviet Union. Jimmy Carter.
Jimmy Carter.
He struggled with an energy supply crisis, inflation, and unemployment. Raised a Baptist, he championed human rights abroad, brokered peace between Egypt and Israel, and negotiated a treaty giving control of the Panama Canal to Panama. But his popularity greatly damaged by the Iran hostage crisis. Ronald Reagan, former Hollywood actor, and at 69, the oldest elected president. His tax cuts and free market reforms were credited with revitalizing the U.S. economy. He launched America's war on drugs, began an arms race with the Soviet Union, which he described as the evil empire, and supported anti-communist insurgencies around the world. George Bush, a decorated World War II Navy pilot, later director of the CIA. He oversaw America's response to the collapse of the Soviet Union and sent American troops to liberate Kuwait during the First Gulf War. Bill Clinton. His presidency saw a period of peace and prosperity, low unemployment, and falling crime.
And for cry.
He became the second president to be impeached following the Monica Lewinsky scandal, but was found not guilty by the Senate. George W. Bush, son of George Bush. His presidency was shaped by
George W. Bush.
terrorist attacks on New York and
George
Washington.
W. Bush.
America's subsequent war on terror led the U.S. to become embroiled in long, costly operations in Iraq and Afghanistan. Barack Obama, the first African-American president, he passed an economic stimulus package to soften the impact of the 2008 financial crash, and an Affordable Care Act to improve access to medical insurance. American forces continue to have a presence in Afghanistan and Iraq, where they help to tackle the new threat of ISIS.
Boris. Oh my god.
Now, all 44 U.S.
Traffic
presidents,
jam.
according to their ranking in the Siena Research Institute survey of 2010. Andrew Johnson,
Andrew Johnson.
James Buchanan, Warren G. Harding, Franklin Pierce, George W. Bush,
George W. Bush.
Millard Fillmore,
Fillmore.
John Tyler,
John Tyler.
Herbert Hoover, William Henry Harrison, Benjamin Harrison, Zachary Taylor, Jimmy Carter, Rutherford B. Hayes, Richard Nixon, Calvin Coolidge, Gerald Ford, James A. Garfield, Ulysses S. Grant, Chester Arthur, William Howard Taft, Martin Van Buren, George Bush, William McKinley, Grover Cleveland, John Quincy Adams,
John Quincy.
Ronald Reagan,
Ronald Reagan.
John Adams,
John Adams.
Lyndon B. Johnson,
Johnson.
Barack Obama, Andrew Jackson,
Andrew Jackson.
Bill Clinton,
Bill Clinton.
James K. Polk,
James Campbell.
John F. Kennedy,
John F. Kennedy.
Dwight D. Eisenhower,
Dwight D. Eisenhower.
Harry S. Truman,
Harry S. Truman.
Woodrow Wilson,
Woodrow Wilson.
James Monroe,
James Monroe.
James Madison,
James Madison.
Thomas Jefferson,
Tom Jefferson.
George Washington,
George Washington.
Abraham Lincoln, Theodore Roosevelt, Franklin D. Roosevelt,
Franklin D. Roosevelt. Okay, everyone.
Bridgman images are the leading
Today I
supplier of
listen
art,
the
culture, and historic images and
story
footage,
of the President of
representing
America,
many of the
of
world's
the
finest
USA.
museums, collections, and artists. Their experts are ready to help with research and copyright for projects
Also
ranging from TV and
learn
film to publishing and
to
advertising.
listen, also
For more
learn
information, please visit
to
bridgmanimages.com.
pronunciation.
Epic History TV relies on the support of its fans to keep making history videos. Please visit our Patreon page to find out how you can help and even get to vote on future topics.
Very traffic, very. So all container because this road a lot of factory, garment factory around there. So that's why the container a lot. Very difficult, very hard to drive car on this road, but no choice. John Kennedy Aerobation.
These guide to the first 44 presidents of the United States. George Washington,
See? Hi, my
John
God.
Adams,
John Aaron.
Thomas Jefferson,
John Jefferson.
James K. Polk,
James Campbell.
Zachary Taylor, Millard Fillmore, Franklin Pierce, James Buchanan, Abraham Lincoln, Andrew Johnson, Ulysses S. Grant, Rutherford B. Hayes, James A. Garfield,
Okay, everyone.
Chester Arthur,
I think too long time for live. Okay, now we are close the line now. So thank you for everyone for support my channel and also the new subscriber, also the old and the new subscriber.
Woodrow Wilson,
Thank you all of you and take care of your hair
G. Harding,
to again coronavirus or
Hoover,
COVID-19
Franklin D. Roosevelt.
Clean your hand every frequency
Dwight D.
and
Eisenhower. John
wearing
F.
mask.
Lyndon Johnson.
Keep distance from the other people,
Richard Nixon.
or at least 1.5 1.5 meter, and
Ronald Reagan.
also the other thing that
George.
we need to use alcohol or detergent that have the alcohol also. So I wish all of you
Richmond
to
Images are the leading supplier of
avoid
art,
the
culture,
coronavirus.
historic images and footage.
Okay,
Representing
thank you
many of the
for
world's
your
finest
watching.
museums, collections, and artists. Their experts
Bye.
are ready to help with research and copyright for projects ranging from